Okay, and I think we're seeing some good numbers in the audience now. So let's say we're good to kick off. So once again, good afternoon, everyone. We're very glad to have you here. This is the webinar 3 of our Atlassian Scotland webinar series. We have an exciting panel discussion for you today. Before we proceed to the panel discussion, let's just do a bit of housekeeping first. So if you've joined the series before, you'll know that we will have a Q&A running throughout. And if you look in your webinar window, you'll see a Q&A box that will appear on the stage area to the right-hand side of your screen. So feel free to pop in your questions throughout the webinar. If you're lucky, one of our team members or even one of the panelists might answer it as we go. But if they don't worry. We will get to the Q&A at the end and we'll answer all the questions there. For any questions that exceed our time limit, we will make sure to cover them off offline and we'll send an update to everyone who attended with answers to those questions. A reminder that we'll also have a couple of quick polls running through. Again, those will appear on the right-hand side of your screen, so just keep an eye for them. And we'll also keep them up on the screen when we kick them off. So without further ado, thanks again for joining. Let's get started. Just a quick reminder, you're listening to New Verve Consulting. We're the #1 gold solution partner in the UK. And today, it is our pleasure to welcome 3 panel members to our panel discussion. We have Peter Bruning, who's operational manager at the Student Loans Company. We have Peter Hinds, head of operations at Synergy Learning, and Sascha, Wiswedel, who is solution engineer at Atlassian. So welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for joining this panel discussion with us today. I suppose it would be great if we could just get a quick introduction from each of you. So let's start with Peter Bruning. Peter, over to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Peter Bruning. I work for the Student Loans Company, as it says there. And I do many things, but one of the things relevant to this is that I'm the site manager for our Jira and Confluence site, which has been running for more than 2 years now. We have a quite large site of about 1,200 users. And in the past, we've went through various migration exercises. But I'll discuss that more in the actual questions. Thanks.
Sounds great. Thanks very much, Peter. Good to have you here. Peter Hinds, Synergy Learning, over to you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Peter Hinds. I work for Synergy Learning as head of operations. Synergy Learning provide learning technology solutions. We've been using Atlassian tools for many years now, but we've really increased the use over the last 5, and the last year or so has been focused in and around our migration towards cloud.
Fantastic. Thanks, Peter. Good to have you here. And Sascha from Atlassian, over to you.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm Sascha Wiswedel from Berlin, Germany, and I'm a pre-sales solutions engineer at Atlassian. And usually I am helping customers on their path to the Atlassian Cloud, usually from server or data center instances. And yeah, I'm helping them making the right decisions, finding out if the cloud is the right thing for them, and getting them on their ways.
That's great. Thanks, Sascha. Excited to have you all here. So I think, well, without further ado, let's just get started. And let's kick off by this kind of very basic question, really. But obviously, we know that Peter Bruning and Peter Hinds, both of you are at different stages of your migration journey. So tell us a little bit about your migration journey. Where are you in terms of migration? Why don't we have Peter Bruning start on this one first?
Yes, I'm sort of in a slightly different position because we kind of finalized our migration journey. We did it roughly 2 years ago. We had a very, shall I say, confusing picture almost of how we were managing these things before. We had one on-premise Confluence site, quite few people. We had one small cloud site already for one team. And then we were also using another tool called Mingle, which was discontinued by the provider of that tool. So basically, we brought all that together in one cloud site. So there were various migrations involved. So we had to obviously migrate the on-prem Confluence content. We had to migrate the stories from the other tool using various migration mechanisms, basically. And obviously, we had to extend quite dramatically the site we had in terms of users, but we also had to think about much more about how do you run a multi-team site as opposed to running a one-team site, a single team site, which it was. So that actually brought quite a few new aspects to the fore as well. We obviously had the support from our new Verve colleagues with setting this up, with migrating it, and with configuring some of our things. We also have that's my last thing, diverse user base, and the experience varies quite dramatically from people who are really totally into the agile stuff and other people are just really starting on that journey.
That's very interesting, Peter. Thanks for that. Out of interest, are you currently on the standard or the premium offering for Atlassian Cloud?
Yes, we are on the standard version of both Confluence, and for us it's really, well, it's partially just a funding element because it's quite a bit more expensive, so it's sort of weighing up whether the additional functionality is worth the money, especially when you're on a big number of users. So because everything's obviously multiplied by that big number, so you can't say, oh well, let's just have this feature for 50 users would be really useful, but you'd have to buy it for all 1,200 users, and that sometimes makes it a bit difficult to justify.
Yes, completely understandable, and we do see customers sort of weighing up these options every day. So completely understandable that you've made this particular choice in your situation. Peter Hinds, same question to you. Obviously, you're in a different position at a different stage of your journey. So tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. So optimistically, if we look at our migration, we're maybe 2/3 of the way through, and that's basing that upon per application. Last year, we migrated our Confluence server into Confluence Cloud, and we upgraded our Bitbucket server to Data Center Edition, and we've configured Atlassian Access for use with the Confluence Cloud instance at the moment. If we look at it slightly differently by the effort required to move the remaining application, or maybe slightly further behind on that, or maybe around halfway through our overall migration. Jira for us is and its associated apps are the ones that we've absolutely the most use in. So that's quite a bit more work than the Confluence and Bitbucket work that we undertook last year.
Very interesting. Thanks for that. And I suppose just to touch on the Jira side of things, because you did mention that this is probably the heavyweight amongst them for you. For migrating Jira to cloud, are you looking at the standard features or the premium features for your use case scenarios?
Probably standard, but still to be decided. I suppose that's one of the beauties of the cloud, is that it gives you that flexibility to change that at the time you need to. You're not locked in there, and if you're going on the monthly billing options. For our Confluence, we did go at the standard at the time, and we can sort of review that ad hoc to see what the latest features are. For example, the external users potentially coming in there is a bit of a pull for us towards premium. So we'll continue to monitor that and upgrade as we need to.
Indeed, I think that's a very good shout. Just mentioning that in terms of scalability, obviously cloud gives you that advantage. It's not just the number of users now that you can scale; it's also the performance and features associated with it. So yeah, thanks for pointing that out. I think this sort of sets the stage nicely for the follow-up questions that we're going to ask to the panel. But before we do, and this is where we turn to the audience. So this is poll time. So the first poll of the webinar should now appear on the right-hand side of your screen. So we would like to know, before we move on, what are the biggest challenges that you foresee or have already encountered when migrating or planning on migration? And we have a few sort of common options that we see here that customers mention. So do let us know. We'll keep the poll up for maybe 30-60 seconds just to give everyone a chance to pick an answer. We can see some responses coming in already. So just giving everyone a little bit longer to try and vote on this poll, just to give us a little bit of insight into what the biggest challenges are that you foresee in your migration journey. And I can see from the live results that we can see some interesting results coming in. Feature disparity between server and cloud is actually in the majority here. So that is the biggest concern that people seem to share. Budget constraints are another one, and then resourcing issues. So these seem to have taken the center stage. We also have a little bit of concern about management or team buy-in. But I think feature disparity is sort of taking center stage here. So with that in mind, obviously we'll keep the poll running. So if you haven't submitted your answer, please do. But with those insights from those initial answers, let's move on and turn to the panel with basically the same question. And I suppose let's flip things around a little bit. So Sascha, it will be interesting to hear your insights on the results that we just discussed, and you'll remember that the biggest challenge that people pointed out was feature disparity. Is this what Atlassian see from feedback from customers as well, or are there any other insights that you could share?
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. So feature disparity, of course, is from depending on the customer an issue, but yeah, and we are addressing that. Firstly, by our roadmap, we are transparently communicating what we're up to, and there's also a very public Jira, basically allowing you to discuss your feature necessities and so on. When we are honest, Jira and also Confluence have been on the market for quite some time, and every software on the planet has eventually the problem that features are getting more and more and more, and especially as a vendor, you don't really know what is still used, where did we go in the wrong direction. It's hard to sort out the feedback, and so we're seeing this as a chance to have kind of reinvent Jira and Confluence in the cloud. We've done a lot of research before what we put in the, let's say, first versions, but we are moving very, very fast and developing new features and bringing new value, and yeah, also evaluating all the time what is really still necessary, what is kind of working differently nowadays, other than in the 1990s when we first started with Confluence. No, not really. But yeah, of course we're taking that seriously, and we're in active discussions with the customers, and we also have customer advisory boards where we are actively having panel or round discussions about what is necessary, and maybe what not, because that is also a very important thing. So we don't waste our time developing any features that nobody ever uses anymore. One other, the second part of your question I would like to answer is what do we see also as quite often in discussions, and I'm surprised, or positively surprised actually, that security concerns doesn't rank that high, because that is something I have a lot of discussions around. Well, I'm based in Germany. I'm specialized on the EMEA and German-speaking market, and some of you might know, especially Germany and France are very, very security concerned when it comes to cloud applications, and so we have a lot of discussions around that. But yeah, happily we usually we usually take those concerns away. We mitigate everything, but yeah, from my experience, that is something that comes up quite often, and I'm very happy. Maybe you have more recent results now than before, but I'm happy to see that's not the top one concern.
Awesome. No, thanks so much, Sascha, for that insight. I think, well, in the context of everything that we just described on the poll results, Peter Hinds, I'd be curious to know, given that you're in the middle of your migration journey, how does all of this relate to the concerns that you might have?
Yeah, so for us, the biggest challenge we had was somewhat along the same lines with features, but it was more aimed towards the marketplace app feature compatibility. There's a number of the marketplace apps which we are fully dependent on. They're really baked into every level of our business operations, from the time tracking through to the reporting and so forth. So from what we can see in that the changes are coming through thick and fast there, and that the vendors seem to be really focused on that cloud-first approach. And as we're reviewing that regularly, it seems to be a changing landscape week to week, which is a really positive sign for us as we're gearing up towards that Jira migration now. Looking back at the Confluence migration last year, we had one app which didn't give us the same functionality, exactly the same in the way which we required it, or we were used to it, certainly, on our Confluence server. So we did have to rethink that at the time to say, how can we go about this a bit differently? We're well supported by new Verve on that, and we've ended up with actually a really great result that's been welcomed internally. I think we've the number of customizations and development that we've undertaken in the Jira server are probably going to be one of our larger stumbling blocks to get over to cloud. As we are just dependent on those from that business operational perspective.
Yes, absolutely. I think being familiar with some of those customizations, there's probably going to be an interesting challenge in porting them over to cloud. So we look forward to that. I think Peter Bruning, it would also be good to hear from your side about the challenges that you had when you were migrating from your side.
Yes, our migration was maybe a bit atypical because we were partly coming from a completely different product even. But I think in general, you faced a similar type of challenges. But I would also say, I think it's always a good opportunity to do a bit of a cleanup and really think, well, do we really need to migrate everything in 5-year-old stories? And is it maybe an opportunity to look at our setup to sort of make that more efficient and more, because things sometimes grow organically, which is a bit what happens in Agile, but it can also create a bit of a chaos at point. So that's something we definitely did try to address by giving some guidelines on how to do things without, taking away the possibility of teams to do their own thing and to adjust it for their own team, but keeping some generic health principles, if you like, in place. So it's not something you obviously have to do, but I think it's always a good opportunity because ultimately you'll end up with a better space. And then we had some minor issues with some of the apps, which sometimes you don't always have the cloud version of every single app. We had that with one of them on Confluence, but nothing major we couldn't deal with. So I think that the security more become an issue almost after that, when security department says, wait a minute, what are you all doing there? But so we have, for instance, implemented single sign-on and things like that. And there are definitely a lot of things you can do on the cloud side as well.
Yes, I think your point about the backdata effectively is a very good shout. Making those decisions about whether we move all the data. Do we just do a big lift and shift, or do we just do something gradual? And as you say, take the opportunity to maybe clean things up, archive things off, etc. It's something that we see customers struggle with every day, but it is probably one of the most important considerations when moving, and it can really simplify your migration path as well. So just a shout out to customers, do consider what it is that you actually do want to migrate, and maybe it is time to put some things in the archive. Thanks, everyone. So the next question that we've got here on the list is, are there any benefits in the Atlassian Cloud that actually excite you, to move over, or that have excited you, at the time that you were moving to cloud? So Peter Bruning, when you were moving to cloud, was there anything in particular that excited you?
Yeah, it's difficult to pin it down, but I think one of the key things for us was to have this single point where everything is, because coming from a very spread out. And for instance, what we couldn't do is any sensible reporting, because it was all in different places. And we also have EasyBI as our reporting tool. And I think that has really helped us quite a lot in terms of also, for instance, promoting it to senior management, because they often, they don't want to see a huge board with all sorts of tickets. They just want the big picture. I mean, I know there's reporting in Jira as well, but it might not be only cloud. But for us, that was definitely a big advantage to have that reporting capability, but also therefore using that to promote the use of Jira. And we're doing that to this day. You were showing them reports and saying, oh, you can get this, you can get that, you can click into it, you can do all sorts of things. Oh, great, and why can I not get that for that team? Oh, well, they haven't using Jira yet. So you get a bit of, through that, you get a bit of a push to start using it more. So I would think for me, it's that central repository and reporting options, which really helps me.
100%, and I think you've also highlighted another benefit, which is the opportunity to consolidate. So again, something to consider on your migration path if you are on that journey. It is a real opportunity to consolidate. Maybe you're running multiple on-prem sites, and the migration to cloud gives you an opportunity to merge them together into one. And obviously, Verve can help you with that. Peter Hinds, what about yourself? Any benefits in cloud that excite you?
Yeah, I mean, for us, I think it was the rate of development of new features and the way in which they're delivered, just behind the scenes almost. It's really nice to have that. It's a bit of a sea change from the more sort of forklift-esque approach, of upgrading your server and all the associated planning that goes into that behind the scenes. So having those new features, and I think also just there's a real more contemporary feel to the cloud applications. From within the more technical side of our teams, that wasn't so much of a concern, but for the less technical members, they really tend to engage more with it, more with the cloud applications than they had done previously with the server versions.
Yep, that is a very good shout, and I suppose in light of that as well, it might be worth turning to Sascha, because obviously we have Atlassian's finest here. Sascha, in light of what our panelists have mentioned, what are your thoughts? Is there anything specific in cloud that does excite you?
Well, first of all, thanks to Peter Hinds. Give me a call. I want to hire you from the spot. Because what you just said, that's one of the things I want to point out. That this you call it the forklift approach, because that is something I personally see, and also customers value a lot. That you're getting rid of all the maintenance and security issues. We all remember too well the recent developments end of last year, hashtag Log4j, where you actually have to open up your whole IT and find if you're somehow affected, and the speed of fixing and mitigating risks and so on is so much higher in a centralized hosted application. Plus in the end, you don't have to care about it anymore, because you're paying somebody to take care of that, and you have a peace of mind. And and the whole upgrading thing falls away. So the whole maintenance and security concerns are not there anymore. That is something that is pro SaaS anyway. It's not Atlassian specific. It's the discussion SaaS or not SaaS, but that is one thing that excites me very much. Two things that excite me, especially about the Atlassian cloud as well, is firstly the openness for integrations. The Jira and Confluence and everything is not only integrated with itself, but open to a lot of other applications that you use. We acknowledge we're not alone on the planet. We don't want to serve every use case on the world. And therefore, we have integrations with Slack, with MS Teams, with dozens of other things and APIs everywhere. So you basically can integrate it into everything and the way backwards. Yeah, and last thing is just the pace of innovation that a cloud environment just unlocks, because when there's when as a software vendor you don't have to take into mind, well, can we launch a feature already? Can we make sure every customer upgrades properly, or are they on a way earlier version? That's completely out of the equation. We can launch way earlier and do fixings way quicker, because we don't rely on the actual doing of the upgrade on the customer side, and therefore we can innovate way faster.
Awesome. Yes, couldn't agree more. And I think that also ties in very well with the DevOps culture of continuous integration and innovation.
Agile is the buzzword I didn't use.
Indeed. Okay, that's great, and thank you very much for letting us know about the benefits that you see. I think I would like us to look at the flip side as well of this, and specifically aiming this, as it were, at Peter Hinds' synergy in synergy learning and kind of being in the middle of that migration journey. Are there any kind of gaps in functionality in the cloud products that might be putting off the company from migrating at this moment?
So yes, putting off from migrating at the moment, we're waiting for a few gaps to be closed off specifically within the third-party apps which we use. In the long term, though, there's nothing that would force us to remain on server. It comes down to one of the most simplest of reasons, is that we've looked at the cost comparison between going up to data center or going to cloud, and the option of going across the cloud for us really made that there was only one option truthfully available to us, with the difference in licensing. So it's nice to be going across to that. It's just a case of when, and that's a little bit of a moving item at the moment. This
that absolutely makes sense. It's something that we hear from customers as well. Sascha, I don't know whether Atlassian has a view on this that you'd like to share.
Well, definitely the app question is something that comes up with over 1,000 apps in the marketplace from third parties. It's hard to keep them all on the same page and motivated, let's say. But if you look at the numbers, at the pace of cloud availability of apps, there has, especially in the last year in 2021, there has been so much movement when really things kind of seem to explode and kick off, and everybody released their versions and so on. So this was a huge move forward to unlocking the functionality gaps, so customers still can use their apps because they are now available. A half year ago, it was, I don't have the numbers before me, but it's hundreds less than it's today. And we have teams actively communicating with each and every vendor out there, trying to find out what are your blockers. Why aren't you releasing any cloud version? Do you simply want to deprecate this app? That's fine, but let's work together then, at least in helping the customers find a good alternative, and don't let them stand in the rain. And that is something that we also do during a cloud migration assessment, helping the customers find out, are the apps available, maybe contact the vendor, see if they have an early access program already, do they need an alternative, and so on.
Awesome. Yes, that makes sense.
Okay, one thing, it's not really a functionality, but it's a compliance thing again, that puts some customers off, especially in regulated industries like financial services and healthcare, for example, who just cannot go to a SaaS vendor if they don't bring those certifications that they need. And that is also something that we're actively working on. We just got the European financial services. We are about to release the HIPAA compliance for healthcare very soon, and a number of other certifications. So that unlocks whole industries who are just by compliance not able to go to cloud, even if everything else is fine. But they need to tick the box, and we're actively working on that.
Sounds great. No, thanks for mentioning that, because I suppose compliance is another big question mark there. So it sounds like the future is bright, and gaps are being bridged at an accelerating pace, which is great to know. Next question I'd like to put to the panel, and here particularly, maybe let's start with Peter Bruning. Obviously, given that Atlassian Cloud is a managed service and you no longer have to manage your resources, therefore, how have you found sort of reallocating the resources that were previously responsible, maybe for adminning and managing the infrastructure that you were running for your on-prem applications?
Yes, again, it is because we weren't really running a big on-prem Jira site anyway before. There were some elements of it. We were running a Confluence site on-prem. And somebody old tool ran on-prem. And the problem we had more is that we weren't managing it properly. So we hadn't assigned the correct resources to do this. And if we would have continued basically on an on-prem site, we would have had to invest on bringing more people in to manage these servers, or obviously farm it out to somebody else. So we would have induced the cost. So that's right. So it's not so much about reallocating people who are already doing that, but making sure we are in a space where it's better supported. I mean, our overall company strategy is to move towards cloud as much as possible for that reason as well, not just for Atlassian, but in general. And then, as Sascha indicated, if there would be any challenges, it could be security as well. We're obviously scrutinizing what we do there, but so far they are happy with the things we've been able to do for them. But obviously there's things like sharing PPI data and things like that, especially on Confluence. They are kind of worried about in principle. But therefore, we obviously don't open our site up to the public. So that should be. And also with apps, for every single app, you kind of need to check it with security. Are you okay with us doing that? And then they check, oh, well, are you sharing data? Are you moving things to another site? So that always brings an extra dimension in which you maybe wouldn't have if you would be on-prem.
Yes, yeah. Very, very good shout. And I suppose maybe a similar but not quite the same question to Peter Hinds. Being where you are on your journey, do you currently have resources that are necessary to actually migrate to cloud?
Yes, so we have that split out amongst a few members of the team, depending on what part of the applications we are working on at that time. So a good example would be our QA department, who would use one of the vendor applications for their test cycle management. And so they would take the lead on that part of the migration. Likewise, our lead support engineer would take the lead on the migration of Jira Service Management across into the cloud. And so we have a number of people, each with their own sort of specialist interest within the applications.
That's great. Thanks very much. And a quick follow-up question to this, again to the both of you, but maybe going back to Peter Bruning. Have you seen users changing their day-to-day habits now that you've migrated to Jira Cloud? Have they benefited from any sort of features or possibilities, capabilities in Jira Cloud since?
Yes, I mean, it's basically more from starting to use Jira full stop, whether it's specific to cloud, so it might make it easier. But yeah, we will definitely, I mean, like I said, we have a very diverse user group, so there are sort of the ones which are quite fairly advanced in the agile journey and they were using the previous tool, and there's other teams who've just only started on it. But what we see is a lot of sort of, think of the word, like these teams influence each other. They might go to to stand up of another team and say, oh, they're using this, so that's actually quite good, and they have live boards and things like that. So you get a lot of that because it's on the same site, that other teams start getting interested and say, oh, that's not as difficult as I thought it was. I would like a bit of that as well. So you get a lot of where the whole company starts to use at least similar mechanisms and similar processes, which can only be a benefit because it makes it easier for people to move between teams because they recognize these kind of things, these ceremonies. So it is just Agile is not just about Jira, but it definitely helps a lot in getting these benefits. Ownership as well, I think, is very key, which I always keep hammering on. Like, don't let the manager move all the tickets. The people need to do it themselves. But that kind of thing, I think, is really important.
Did we lose Kris?
Yeah, I think so as well.
Yeah.
I thought it was me. Yeah, so maybe one of you guys can talk a bit about it as well.
Yeah, well, maybe I would like to say one thing, Peter Bruning, that you said about the necessity to the app assessment, that you have to check, is it taking out any data? Is the app compliant still? So just a little preview, let's say, that Atlassian is also working on better visibility on what do the apps in the cloud actually do, where do they take the data, do they offer data residency, and so on. So there's going to be a big transparency of a big transparency project, let's call it like that, to help customers make their decisions way quicker and way better informed without having to assess each and every app one by one.
Yes, absolutely. There's also a standard questionnaire that they can fill in, and that's quite often ticked. So our security department is reasonably happy with that if that's been done, as an example.
Yeah, we heard that a lot from customers, and we are actively working on that. So watch out for changes in the marketplace listings.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Apologies. I think we dropped off for a second, but it sounds like the conversation has progressed in the meantime, which is great to see. I think let's move on to the next question, if possible, because we obviously would like to hear more about your insights. So, Peter Hinds, question for you here. What was it like to work with an Atlassian partner in those early stages of preparing for the migration?
So there's a fantastic level of information available directly from Atlassian on this. And we were reading through that at the same time, but engaging with an Atlassian partner was easily one of the soundest investments we made whenever we started seeing how big this project could be ahead of us. It really expedited that planning part of the project initially. It really gave us that head start from what we probably would have spent maybe 2 or 3 times the amount of time on trying to get ourselves up to speed. There was definite questions and that we asked that the answers came through to immediately that we would have had to spend time researching. From that perspective, that was a real time saver for us. It allowed us as well also to maybe read the documentation at our own pace. We weren't frantically trying to solve a problem. We knew if we really got stuck with something that we could reach out to Verve, that you guys were on hand to be able to support us on that. And I think just also having something down in a presented document that we could gain buy-in from budgetary constituents, etc., was really useful. So we engaged with Verve to get a consultancy report, sort of a health check audit of our systems. And I mentioned earlier, looking at the 2 options as well. Was Data Center Edition the right fit for us, or was it Cloud? Being able to go through each step really made that a really logical choice for us. I think the biggest thing, the real overriding thing, was just having that assistance available whenever we did hit a bump in the road. I referenced earlier with a Confluence app that was key for us. I mean, that potentially was something that could have held us back, but that didn't cause too many sleepless nights in the end. We were able to get that solution in place and allow us to proceed with the migration to the place we now are.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Glad to hear that it was a positive experience for you. And I suppose I think this prompts another quick question to yourself again. Obviously, you took quite an active role in migrating your Confluence to cloud. How did you find that experience? Did it go smoothly? Yeah,
so I mean, it's quite funny when you look back on it, because the actual migration, if I took that about the actual weekend that we hit the go button and we migrated the Confluence. That truly was seamless on it. It was surprisingly seamless. It's not often you can say that about any, in any industry, that a type of project like that where you are doing something really quite substantial. But that probably doesn't do justice to the amount of work that went on behind the scenes. We did a number of test migrations, migrations at the start, so testing specifics, specific spaces, specific functionality, specific apps. We iterated on those. Verve authored some script runner scripts for us to automate part of the process, which was really important to us. That was part of the solution for closing off that feature gap. And we then cleared everything down entirely and went as if it was our migration in a full test migration. We did that as close to the real migration as possible. So I think it was about 2 weeks prior. And that included the running of the custom scripts, make sure all that checked out. So I suppose it's that old story that all the hard work that went on behind the scenes at the planning and test phases really paid off whenever we came to do the real world migration.
Fantastic. Thanks for the for kind of catching us up on the details, because I think this is maybe the part of the process that is often not visible to other customers. So it's very good to hear kind of a live, almost like a case study, just to see what is actually involved in the process and what might have to go on behind the scenes to enable it. Off the back of this, a question directly to Sascha from Atlassian. Both of our panelists spoke about sort of migrating either to consolidate existing products or migrating and sort of having considerations around apps in the marketplace, the third-party products. Obviously, the Cloud Migration Assistant from Atlassian facilitates both of these scenarios. And we know that there is some initial support for some third-party products in it already, but do we have any visibility of when we could expect more products to be added? Any sort of new release of the Cloud Migration Assistant on the horizon?
Yeah, so as you correctly mentioned, the Cloud Migration Assistant does support the automated app migration already. What is sometimes missing is the app part, because the marketplace app itself has to support that as well. And there we are back at the question with the app vendors kept catching up. Supporting that automated migration path, and good news is they are catching up very quickly, because it has been known for a long time that this is going to come and that's going to bring much value for the customers, obviously, and they're getting more and more in every day. You can actually see that in the Cloud Migration Assistant, where it says we have that app assessment page, and it says there is an automated path available or a half manual, and you get a link for the rest that you might have to do. But that completely depends on the app itself. And even sometimes the app itself doesn't store any data, so there's no migration necessary in the first place. But that is also an information you get on the app assessment page. Yeah.
Awesome.
So,
very useful.
one thing you can do on the marketplace is you can watch an app for updates, and if you have a specific one that you're waiting for to support the automatic migration, just watch the app and you get an automatic email when there's any movement from the app vendor.
Thanks for the tip. That's very useful to know for everyone who's attending today, and it's great to hear that there's more further developments on the migration assistant as well. Next question. And again, it would be nice to hear on this from Atlassian, because if you have been following the news recently, you probably have heard that the knowledge-based functionality in Jira Service Management is going through the process of being integrated much more tightly, to the point of being bundled in the tool. Sascha, from your perspective, what benefits do you expect this to bring to the users of Atlassian Cloud?
Yeah, so I talked about integrations earlier and bringing things more seamless together, and that is obviously one of the let's say, easy parts where Atlassian provides both of the products, Jira and Confluence, and therefore, yeah, the Confluence editing experience and creating and editing pages and so on, and working with the macros and everything you know from Confluence every day is coming closer, or yeah, not only closer, but right into Jira Service Management. So you can, yeah, edit your knowledge base without having to move over to another tab and connecting your knowledge base articles and so on. So because that is a friction point that yeah, let's say entry level or a certain level of users don't accept, and or where we have the ability to make the life of the users easier, because it's just logically connected to have the knowledge base in there. Why switch to a different program when you can have it right in there? And the cloud technical infrastructure allows us to to just technically also easily integrate all that underlying modules that a Confluence editor technically needs into Jira Service Management, because it's physically right around the corner. You don't have to integrate the full Confluence; you just have to integrate the editor. That's an advantage that you have in the cloud without having to have any extra computing resource that like you would have on-prem, and therefore, it makes the experience more seamless. It leaves you right where you are as a Jira Service Management user or agent in the first place. And also in the user, on the client side, on the one who consumes the knowledge base articles, the displaying part of the knowledge base is more enhanced and bringing more Confluence features to the front end, where users actually can read. You have more macros, more visibility available.
That's awesome. Thanks for giving us the wider context, and hopefully that's helped drum up some interest amongst both our attendees, but also everyone else joining this webinar. So thanks for that, Sascha. I think we're quite keen to move on to the Q&A soon. So why don't we first go through the next poll that we have for you. So for everyone attending, the next poll is about whether you think Verve as an Atlassian partner could do more to support you throughout your migration process. So just a very simple yes or no, or maybe you're not sure. But if you think that yes, we could do more, do let us know in the comments what your thoughts are about what form this support could take. If you're not sure, again, do get in touch, and we'd be more than happy to discuss that with you. So we'll leave that poll running. You'll find it on the right-hand side of your screen. And just let us know in the next sort of 30 to 60 seconds your thoughts about how we could support you throughout migration. And we're slowly seeing some answers. And there is indeed an emphasis on yes thus far based on the answers. So we're very keen to hear how you think we could support you better. Let us know in the comments in the chat section, or just get in touch after the webinar, and we'd be very, very keen to understand how we could support you better. I think what we'll do is we'll leave that poll running just so people can submit their answers if they want to write some comments, etc. But I'd like to also pose this question to the panel, and maybe also expand it. Do you think Verve, but also Atlassian, could do more to support you in each step of the migration plan that you're running? So why don't we start with Peter Hinds, who's in the middle of the migration?
Sure. So the Atlassian documentation is really the first port of call, and I think that's a really good job for getting people into the mindset of what is going to be involved there. It includes lots of tips and tricks and guidance on what the steps are that you actually need to do to go through your applications and plan your migration and actually get it across into the cloud instances. That was really useful for us in the early days, whenever we were just beginning this journey. From the technical perspective, the work that's went on in the migration assistant has been great so far. I mean, we've obviously used that extensively in our Confluence migration. So just, I suppose, it's continuing to progress that in terms of features and functionality, which sounds like it's coming along nicely. We'll be obviously making use of that with our Jira migration as well later this year. I think the one thing that we'd love to see is the increased length of trial for the marketplace apps. Although we see the difference between the core Jira, let's say, the core application, and the marketplace apps, for us as users, they're very tightly integrated into our day-to-day. The way in which Atlassian provides you that core app cloud trial, as long as you have a valid server license, was just so beneficial. We used that extensively throughout. It'd be great if there was something along the lines of that from the marketplace apps. And on the new Verve side, I mean, taking that the consultancy audit was really the key thing for us in terms of getting that support. That's something I would highly recommend, because it just gets you so many steps forward in one go.
Awesome, thanks, Peter. That's very beneficial. And I think let's pose the same question to Peter Bruning. In hindsight, Peter, having gone through migration, were there any gaps maybe in support where you might have felt that Atlassian or New Verve as a partner could have supported you better?
Well, in general, I think we were very happy with the support. We got both technical and functional, because it was a bit of a multifaceted beast that we're trying to do. In hindsight, the one thing I maybe was thinking about is it would be good if you could have tested some of this. Not that it went majorly wrong, but we didn't really have something like, say, a staging area. Like, just say, we'll just do it there, see if it works, and then if it doesn't work, we can remove the whole lot again and start again. In a sense, it was sort of a blank canvas, so it was maybe we could have done that anyway. But there was an existing team on that site already, so I think maybe things might have progressed now that there's about specifically the testing of these things, that you could actually test it before you actually do it.
Yes, that's a very good shout as well. I guess, Sascha, having heard from both Peters, do you have any sort of thoughts or reaction from Atlassian's perspective, or maybe there are things that we could be looking at, or customers could be looking at as part of their migration process that you would like to highlight here?
Yeah, one thing I would like to highlight, which is really pretty recent, is that a lot of apps are now actually free at least on the free tier of the of Jira and Confluence. So not only so the below 10 users tier on Jira and Confluence, which is free, is now also applied on a lot of apps. So if you just want to try out an app with a focus group, just spin yourself up a little instance and get your 5 or 6 people on the focus group there, and try the app as long as you want, because it stays free also with the free instance. That is one thing I really recommend, and it's. Yeah, it's part of the approach of our approach to to let the customers grow with us. We call it the flywheel approach, but also it enables you to just test as long as you need.
That's awesome. Thanks very much, Sascha, for highlighting that. I think that will be very useful going forward for anyone who's still on the journey to migrate. We're keen to move to the Q&A, and I realize we've only got 5 minutes to spare, so let's move to question time and see whether we can answer some questions from our audience here. So I can see in the Q&A section, which if you haven't spotted it thus far, it's on the right-hand side of your screen under the stage area, and there's a Q&A box. Please do pop some questions in there. But the first question: how long did the migration take? I think that's very useful to know from a customer perspective. So Peter Bruning, in your experience from the migration, how long did that take?
Sorry, I keep clicking on my picture instead of the microphone. Yes, no, it's been a while. It was sort of a phase thing, but I think in total it was at least a month before we. It depends with where you think about all the preparation and the discussions we had, because we spent a lot of time. It wasn't just migration. We also spent a lot of time on design and things like that, which Kris will remember. So if it was just a plain migration, if I think purely about the Confluence thing, which was a plain migration, that probably only took us a week or so. But even there, it was because we had to first upgrade the site because it was so old and things like that. And I think that the actual migration, if you just distill it down to that and you've done all your preparation, that can actually be a matter of days. I mean, that's not, but it's the preparation which can sometimes take the time, especially if you want to think about cleanup as well. As I said before, that will also need some time to consider and to discuss.
Very good shout. We've got another question on the Q&A. I suppose maybe we'll pose this to Peter Hinds. Is there anything you wish you knew about life in the cloud before the migration? I suppose you've migrated some stuff, but not other products. So is there anything you wish you knew?
Nothing major. I think probably. In hindsight, we would have liked to have understood the theming restriction a bit more in Confluence Cloud before we migrated across. That was sort of the bump in the road I referenced earlier on. We'd been using refined theme in our Confluence server instance, but the way in which it needs to operate in Confluence Cloud is really quite different, and it wasn't ideal for us. There's certainly your mileage will vary on that, and your use case will likely continue as is, but for us it wasn't the way we wanted to go with it being a sort of an external service to our Confluence Cloud. Very happy with refined theme and continue to use it on the Jira Service Management portal once that is across. But that's the only thing really that sticks out for us in terms of knowing before we moved across the cloud.
Perfect. Thanks very much for that insight. And I suppose another follow-up question targeted here, specifically at Synergy Learning, because you're still in the middle of the migration, how have you found the experience of kind of running in hybrid mode, some stuff on-prem, some stuff in cloud?
Yeah, with one exception, really well. The one exception is that we use EasyPI extensively, and we're using that extensively throughout our Confluence server. There were workarounds we could have used to keep that to keep that presentation within Confluence Cloud, but we really wanted to use the macro as we had been. So we had to deal with that just in the simplest of ways with our user base. So through communication, we let them know that this functionality wouldn't be available in the short to medium term. We showed them how to get the data just through our Jira server instance directly, so that scratched that itch from a usability perspective. And just a bit of reassurance that we'll be able to bring this back once our Jira and apps are across into Jira Cloud as well. I think for authentication we use SAML across all our applications. So as part of our migration, the first step we actually did was set up Atlassian Access and integrate that with our directory services. So that's unified the sign-in experience across all the applications, regardless of where they are.
Awesome. That's very useful to know. And we'd love to ask the panelists more questions here, but unfortunately, I think we're running against the clock here. So any questions that we didn't get the chance to answer, as I mentioned at the beginning, we will put out answers to all the attendees just to let you know our thoughts on them. But with all that in mind, thanks very much to all our panelists, Peter Bruning, Peter Hinds, Sascha Wiswedel from SLC, Synergy Learning, and Atlassian, respectively. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the very, very useful discussion here. Thanks to our attendees as well. It's been a pleasure hosting you. Before we wrap up, we'll pop out another very quick poll. If you have time, just let us know if you would recommend this webinar series to a colleague. But with all that in mind, thanks again, and we hope to see you in the next webinar.
Thanks for having us.
Cheers, everyone. Thanks again.
Thanks.
Bye.